Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics and Greg Terry co-production. How exciting. I've done two lives in a row, 2 nights in a row. I am giving you guys, it's like Christmas and birthdays all at once, or torture. I'm not quite sure. Greg, welcome again. Hello. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, and welcome everybody. It's going to be a good conversation here. We're going to talk about all kind of things happening. We were just pre-discussing in the green room prior to going live, and I'm sure however long we are on here this evening is going to be really, really good. Johnny, you're going to get me really prepared to go to CrossFit after this. So I'm trying to get my health better so that I can outrun you. I'm not there yet, but I'm working.
You're going to get me prepared to sit on my sofa and watch some kind of crap on TV. So that's a slight difference. What I'm interested to know what you kind of feel in general at the moment. I am a kind of bit all over the place. I think there are two things going on, right? One is that Ukraine are finally bringing to bear their attack drones that they've been producing for some time. We know they've been producing, but we're thinking, where are they? And then, oh, there they are. Oh, there they are again. And that, so I'm really buoyed up about that. I'm quite bullish about Ukraine's the prognosis going forward. And I think with regard to Crimea, I think Crimea is so vulnerable. I think Novorossiysk is vulnerable. I think I'm genuinely excited about what Ukraine can do with ATACMS, with drones and that kind of side of things. Then of course there's a front line, and it's almost like it's completely different war going on there, which is obviously very different. Ukraine have got stuff coming in, but they've got mobilization on the way, but Russia are also throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it. So I'm kind of up, down, up, down. How about you?
The war's won on the front line, in my opinion, and not by Ukraine's ability to strike Novorossiysk, although it is vitally important that they're able to strike long term. And with I'm trying to find the word there. With the ability to do it over and over and over and over again, not just 1 or 2 times a month. We do know that they do not have the supplies. We had Jania on with us a couple days ago talking about when they had the large drone strike, and it was awesome. Multiple locations, a lot of damage done. We know a ship was sank. Ukraine has the ability to do amazing stuff with good weapons. Their skill, their abilities, their tactical know-how to get around Russian air defense, sea defense, they've proven it. But that's not where the war's won. And I know people wanted to say, well, if we're striking back there, that'll slow down the Russian supply. It will. But the war is going to be won on Ukraine being able to stop the supply lines, fix their mobilization, and stabilize the front lines. And today, Reuters, with President Zelensky coming out and saying, okay, we're a year behind. We're always a year behind what we should have had. Those are the things you need to listen to. I had a conversation today with a soldier. He's very happy, just like you say, with the ability to strike deep. And it's getting better and better. And as supply comes and Ukrainian technology improves. But the big concern is right now, these front lines are very vulnerable, and Ukraine is having to rotate units to shore up some defensive lines, especially in the north. We continue to hear about the potential for Sumy or the potential for Kharkiv. I don't believe they'll try to take Kharkiv. I believe they're actually going to try to do something else, and we'll look at that when we look at the map. Ukraine defending well. Ukraine is defending well. The problem comes down to having enough soldiers, having the supply come, and all of these things coming together at the right time. I read an article today in Ukraine that was kind of alarming for me, but it's not alarming. It's just reality. Okay. Ukrainian national athletic teams. These are the guys that, for example, go to the Olympics or compete internationally in all sports. So it can be, from wrestling to judo to whatever. Okay. Not just soccer, all sports. So it's thousands and thousands of athletes, of course, on Ukrainian national teams. 456 have been killed. Ukraine released that number today.
Wow.
456 of their national team athletes. And I don't know if they let that one slip or they did it on purpose. They typically try to not give numbers that are that detailed that you can actually do some analysis on versus, but the war's tough.
Yeah, because you could extrapolate that as how many
Absolutely.
per head,
Absolutely.
you know, per 1,000, how many people per 1,000 are going to be in the athletics team and how many blah, 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 blah. And you can extrapolate death statistics from that. So that's interesting.
Yeah. But,
sure
but with all that said, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I've turned a bit of a corner. But I look at all these different things, all these data points coming in every single day, and I look at so much information that sometimes it's a bit of an overload, and trying to piece together what I actually genuinely feel. And the good news for me is that I don't think Russia have got a huge amount in the tank short of a massive national mobilization. So a lot is going to depend on whether they get to that point. It was being expected so far. They get away with like their national conscription every year and mobilizing from all sorts of places that they can. But if they really want to succeed here, like what is their objective really? If they really want like a maximalist goal and for this to be anything other than a disaster it's looking for them, that's not to say it's going to be successful for Ukraine, but they need to do this massive mobilization. If they don't do that, then I feel really positive for Ukraine. And then when Ukraine are getting these getting up to spec with kind of their own manufacturing, and when they are getting the weapons given to them by their allies, as you say, and they know how to use them, they use them well, they do a good job. And so therefore we need to give them stuff. But as Zelensky said today, and I think that's really good that you brought this up, because I think this is really important. And
these are the things you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this is you could be the sort of person that goes, oh look, stop biting the hand that feeds you, stop being so whingy or complaining. No. This is a guy that is fighting for his existence, for his country's existence, even, and he needs everything he can get, and he's absolutely bang on. So how long did it take to get HIMARS, M777 HIMARS, cruise missiles, main battle tanks? Everything comes late. It's like no, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And you're like, why not yes at the front end there? Because we wouldn't then be in this mess that we're in now. And so I really do I completely understand what he's saying there, and it must be insanely frustrating when you eventually get the stuff that you asked for right at the beginning and then use it really effectively and say, well, look what we can do with it. You know, look how many things we've blown up. Why didn't you give us that at the beginning? And that's just super frustrating.
Well, okay, so let me ask you something. When you talk about cautiously optimistic for Ukraine, as I am, what is your end game for that? What's victory for you?
Well, this is it. I'm cautiously optimistic that Russia can't achieve what it wants to achieve. I think the most likely outcome is because as you say, what they really need to do is push Russia out of the areas that they've pushed themselves into, not only back to like the 2014, but effectively back to 1991 borders. Now, the reality of that is that's just really improbable. Crimea would be the top goal for Ukraine, but it's the top goal for Russia, and so therefore it's all going to come down to negotiations over Crimea. But it just depends how much we help Ukraine and how much we stay in the game for helping Ukraine, because I do get the sense that they're as I've said, their military-industrial complex is picking up, and we are helping. And there are signs where, you know, when the EU say today that, well, yeah, we might be able to get a $30 billion loan that's using the collateral from the $270 billion frozen assets, and you think there's potentially a lot of help Ukraine can get. Like if all the ducks are in a row, like Ukraine can seriously do some damage to Russia. But then it goes back to, will Russia mobilize? Well, how will Ukraine's mobilization go? And these things, so there's a lot it depends on. If that works, then it's still to push the Russians back majorly. that's going to be really attritional for the Ukrainians, and that will cost no matter who wants to push forward. It will cost each army just a huge amount, which is why I get excited about hitting them big time back here. Because if you hit Russia big time back here and you cripple their oil refinery business, then their economy and that sector, then you have a chance that it all goes wrong for Putin back here. And if it all goes wrong for Putin back here, that's the best chance Ukraine have got of taking back their territory. So I just don't know. I'm just hopeful that it will end up more positive for Ukraine than it is for Russia.
My concern is that we do not try to think about this as in the war has just started. We're now 817 days into the war. And Ukrainian infrastructure, especially the electrical grid, is completely wrecked right now.
Yeah.
So when we talk about manufacturing and production, they can't even keep the lights on. So let's call a spade. They cannot keep the lights on. When we talk about pushing them out, with who? With who? Because a lot of the soldiers we have lost are the cream of the crop. Yes, mobilization is going, and it appears that they're having some success in figuring it out, especially with the electronic conscription, but there's still a time there. So what are we really going to be looking at? Let's say mobilization happens and really good, and let's say some good supply comes in and things stabilize. Ukraine keeps hitting behind. Where are we going to be looking at then at the map? That's the important thing. I don't think I don't think we can answer that now.
Anything can even start happening.
Exactly. I don't think we can answer that now. You know, for guys that are here on my channel or on your channel that watch myself as well, I'm a time will tell guy. I just believe that time will tell. And that doesn't change our support. That doesn't change our belief. That doesn't change our efforts. That doesn't change. We're fighting. So we are fighting for the victory of Ukraine, and they are fighting not only for their own nation, but they're fighting for us. So we support them do peremoga, until victory. At the same time, it's going to be a tough battle. So guys, we can't give up.
Yeah, and it's just really interesting. Like I did a lot of talk yesterday and today about what the US's objective is. So you get this theory that's prevalent in a number of places that the US is drip feeding because actually they don't want the Russian Federation to crumble and to fall apart, and so they need Ukraine to sort of win without really proper winning, so that Russia, either Putin dies or they recede, but they don't like fall apart. They don't get so beaten that they fall apart.
All right, so think about your statement right there, ATP Geopolitics. Think about that statement you just made, because I saw in the chat somebody said it went by really quickly. So should we just tell Ukraine to throw in the towel? Of course not. No, for me, victory is 1991 borders, and to establish Ukraine as a sovereign nation that is broken free of that Soviet decades of infiltration and influence that they have been under, and the remnants that they are purging out of their country. That's victory. I'm concerned, you know, when we begin to say, because basically, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Johnny, but at that point, you basically said that would be like a negotiated end where we leave some power with Russia. We establish some security for Ukraine, but at the same time,
my desire is Russia gets completely defeated, falls apart, and resets. That's what I want.
Mine too, but that it will be very challenging to happen without other nations getting involved at a level that I'm not sure they're going to do.
Yeah, and so all these theories are competing, like, of what the US is really wanting to achieve, like behind the scenes. Like, what's the DoD want? What does Lloyd Austin want? What does Biden want? What does probably even deeper than Biden? This is a long going thing about what the US has wanted with regard to Russia over decades, and it's really interesting that with the Ramstein meeting starting again today, that Lloyd Austin has come out and has said, well, he kind of smashed. He attempted to give clarity to the question, what about US weapons being shot into Russian territory? And this is what he said. Can you let me know if you can hear this one? Can you hear that?
American air defenses to hit those Russian bombers in Russian territory.
Well, you know, again, you can diagram a number of different cases for whatever, I would say that we have been clear about providing Ukraine the ability to defend its sovereign territory. And again, the dynamics of an aerial engagement, I leave it up to the experts, but certainly, our expectation is that they continue to use the weapons that we provided on targets inside of Ukraine. Now, the aerial dynamics a little bit different, and so, but again, don't want to speculate on any one or any type of engagement here at the podium.
So I find that fascinating because he really should have known that question was going to come up and had a very clear answer to that, just a really clear and said, like, this is what we believe. But he was which shows that it's really difficult, and there's probably disagreements behind the scenes about this. But also, so he said, it seems that to me that he said, right, for an ATACMS, don't fire that into Russia. But what's interesting there is he said aerial dynamics are different. And that's another thing. We won't talk about that now, which gives you pause for thought that maybe F-16s come along and it can shoot things into Russia, because he did differentiate those. And I thought that was, unless he's talking about aerial things in another way, like a missile, but that's what we're talking about. So I thought that was interesting for a number of reasons. But first of all, that there wasn't such clarity of thought that he could express it really easily and clearly.
I think they're cowards and scared to death to push the envelope too far. And due to that, we're going to reap that. I still remind people that unless you understand, and I call it Soviet mentality, or we can call it the KGB of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We can call it the mentality of the Kremlin currently. Unless you understand that talk right there from Lloyd Austin does nothing but inflame and make it worse. Until bold talk comes,
yes, I agree.
It's going to be completely disregarded. They could care less what Lloyd Austin said right there.
Yeah. But the flip side for me as well is that I don't think people like him like being asked. Anyone in that sort of position likes being asked direct questions that require a closed answer.
Excuse me.
A yes or no
Excuse
answer.
me. Here we go, left and right, but we meet in the middle. Excuse me. That is the Defense Secretary of the United States. That is the proper question to ask the Secretary of Defense. And the man should have the bollocks enough to say, we're going to stand with Ukraine. And if they need to smash a base in Novorossiysk or St. Petersburg, we're going to give them the ability to do it. And if Russia, you don't like it, take your tanks home or we're coming. That's how you handle it. And I know that may seem brash and bold, but my goodness, that's the Secretary of Defense.
What
a coward.
I agree. On the one hand, I agree. But on the other hand, what I was trying to say is that I think that a lot of people in those sort of positions like to express strategic ambiguity, which is to say, we know what we think back there, but what we don't want to do is put a clarity out there for people to know 100%, because we can be hoist by our own petard, we can get ourselves in trouble. What we want to say is like, and give really vague answers that you can interpret both ways, and then Putin can interpret that both ways.
But Johnny, here's the problem. We're 817 days into this war.
Yeah.
It is too late to play chess with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah,
you've lost the chess game. Now, what do you have to do? You have to throw a tantrum and knock all the pieces off the board and say new rules now. This little bit of deception, listen, the Kremlin and their tentacles throughout the world, they know more about what's going on inside U.S. politics than 50% of the Americans walking on the streets, if not more. Okay. And we want to play this game. It was just a week ago, Denmark. Oh, we're sending the F-16s within the month. And then they had to come back and retroact that within months. We misspoke. It'd be there. Zelensky actually said 3 days ago or 4 days ago, we are looking for F-16s within this year. Now, that's who you listen to. I'm still sticking by September at the earliest, because I haven't heard different from the guys that I trust. But at the same time, if we do not, the chess game's over. It's time. It's put up or shut up.
So then this is interesting. So this is from the US in the UN. So I think this then offers more clarity compared to what we just heard from Lloyd Austin.
меры безопасности Украины в соответствии с уставом.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to have to. That's the translation into.
Well, I know
Ukrainian.
you're fluent.
Yeah. So until Russia withdraws its troops, the United States will supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs to defend itself. This statement was made by Deputy US Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, during a meeting the Security Council convened by Russia over the supply of Western weapons to Ukraine. In other words, he's then saying we will supply. We will help Ukraine and supply Ukraine until Russia withdraws its troops. Now that is clarity and that is strong rhetoric, which makes me think, oh, is that like until it withdraws its troops from 1991 border areas? Like what's going on there? So there needs to be a bit more clarity on that, but that seems to me quite strong. So when going back to this theory about the US drip feeding, and they're trying to eke out this kind of draw but slight win for Ukraine. I don't know that that is what the US is trying to do. I just get lots of conflicting stuff from the US, and I'm not quite sure exactly what the US is trying to do, because sometimes I hear things that are very clear and very strong in support of Ukraine. We're like, right, they're going for the Ukraine win. And then other times I'm like, oh, but then why haven't they done given this and given that? And so I just think there's probably tensions within the US government, the Biden administration, the Department of Defense, the security advisors and whatnot, where they're arguing about all this stuff, and the end result is what we have.
Well, the problem with the drip feed is we're killing heroes every day and civilians. That's what drip feeding is doing. We're losing soldiers we should not be losing because they do not have enough supply. And that's very dangerous, because when it comes down to it, Ukraine has a limit on the amount of boots that they have, and the new boots that will be coming are not as trained as the boots of these heroes that we are laying to rest. So that is a critical time issue. And I know that these people that are in the analysis, whether it's in the Pentagon or throughout Europe, have enough sense to understand simple math and recognize that we need to have help sooner than later. And, you know, I appreciate the UN reps stating that there. And, you know, there was also a chat with the same guy talking back after China made their statements. And then they were talking about a little bit about Iran and all these other things in those statements. But you know what? But once again, Russia's sitting on the Security Council of the United Nations. It is a completely inept, inadequate, antiquated, ridiculous waste of good resources and money. The bottom line is Joseph Biden needs to stand up and say, this is enough. I'm the president of the United States, and this is enough. That's who has to say it.
Yeah, I agree. Christopher's got a really good point here. Austin did say, and I should have picked up on this, is the sort of thing I normally concentrate on, just the little things, the little words here. He did use the word prefers. He didn't say don't use them. And actually, that's what we've heard before from the Pentagon. So I think he really is just reiterating what the Pentagon's previously said, which allows for weapons to be shot inside Russia. But there doesn't seem to be the Ukrainian will to do that, which then suggests that the US are putting some pressure on them not to do that.
You know what I really think they ought to do in all seriousness, and I think people are enjoying, you know, this is a really good conversation and people love it when we do this. We try to do it once a week. I think they ought to just take the weapons and wipe Crimea off the map. So listen, please don't misunderstand
what do you mean by that?
Just
because
smash
I think
it to pieces. Because it's Russia. It's Russia.
Yeah,
No, it's Ukraine, of course, everybody.
Yeah.
Crimea at the Ukraine. No.
But actually, that's what I'm excited about in a military term.
Exactly. In military.
Like,
smash it.
So this is what I was saying earlier, that actually I'm buoyed about this, because the air defenses have been attrited in Crimea, and Ukraine have got, I believe they've got some pretty decent access to quite a decent number of ATACMS going forward. The US has seemed to suggest that they can give lots of ATACMS to Ukraine. If that's the case, like, Crimea can be absolutely hammered. Like, it becomes untenable for the Russians to be there, and that's what I'm excited about, because there's no air defense that's particularly active.
You take Feodosia, you take Sevastopol, and you smash them beyond recognition.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with
that. Well, we can use them in Russia, because according to how you guys perceive things, even though Crimea is Ukraine, but you're considering it Russia, okay, then here you go. And smash it.
And that's the thing about like Russia getting annoyed if missiles were sent into Belgorod, for example. Of course, that's complete.
Hold on, we have to have a pause. Serioja. Yati Biala Blue. Fish is in the house from the front line. There you go, Johnny.
I've got a flag with fish on it.
Look at there.
Doing stuff on this. I don't know that's not fish, obviously, but there's a flag that I think he's signed there.
Yes, it is.
So Russia, the idea is that if you shot an ATACMS into Belgorod, Russia would go, well, that's escalatory, even though they're using Iranian and North Korean munitions and firing them into Ukraine. Let's forget that bit of double standards. If you fired an ATACMS into Belgorod, they'd be going, oh, what are you doing? It's like, yeah, but you haven't done that when it's been fired into Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea, all of which you've said are Russia. And so therefore, if you are sure that those places are Russia, then there should be absolutely no difference to Russia whether Ukraine fired stuff in American weapons into Belgorod or Bryansk or Kursk. So
I think it was a scout that just hit Lugansk. So I think it was a scout, and Russia
this morning.
Yeah, so that's good. But you know, Johnny, let's just lay that down all for a second. Why? Let me ask you a question. Why is Russia permitted to use foreign supply that is good? I mean, listen, Shaheeds are good. In fact, guys, they've been really improved now, because I have been updating this for the past few months. Everything that is taken out of the air at the minimum that is salvageable, of course. Ukraine scours it, checks all the stuff, learns how to take it out or how it's functioning. It's typical military engineering. But now the Shaheeds now have a different radio communication. They keep upgrading their ability to control those things deeper inside Ukraine. Okay, so the Shaheed in its principle coming from Iran, and then Russia with the Garan 2 or the Garan 2 begin to make their modifications. Regardless, we know that missiles have been used. We know that North Korean supply has been used. Missiles. I just don't understand why we permit that. But Ukraine can't respond with foreign material. I can't.
It blows my mind. It frustrates the bejesus out of me. Honestly, it's nuts. But there you go. Let's just have a quick look at the map, see what we can make of the front line, see what your opinions are of what is going on. Let's go to, where are you? I'm going to find you. That's the one there. Let's get the map up. Yes, here we go. Okay, so here we have the map. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please pause the video and check out the key on the screen. So we're going to start in the north, and I'd be interested to see what your opinion is of the north. My opinion is
JP.
Yep.
I just want, before we start diving in this map and sharing it with everybody, I just want to thank you for permitting me to use your map, and JR and all of your guys' hard work. I deeply appreciate it. So thank you publicly.
No problem. This is what it's all about, my man. And thank you to JR, I've done it the last couple of days, but JR does it almost every day, and he's amazing. So I find the North very interesting because I'm trying to work out what their objective is. And I talked about this last night, and I've talked about this a lot. So sorry to those if I'm going to repeat myself, but they're not trying to take Kharkiv. They don't have the troops to do that. So therefore Putin says it's a buffer. It could well be to get closer to Kharkiv so they can hammer Kharkiv with artillery from a lot closer, obviously. If they're using 30,000 or 50,000 or whatever troops there, the question, as I talked about in my live yesterday, is whether it is more worth than putting those troops there to bring troops away, or would it have been worth just putting 50,000 people in Chasiv Yar and completely overwhelming Chasiv Yar? I personally think if I was in charge of the Russian forces, I would have put those troops in Chasiv Yar and not in the northern Kharkiv border. Because yes, they are going to pull troops away, but they would also pull troops away if they'd overrun Chasiv Yar. Ukraine would have thrown in loads of reinforcements to there. And I just think this is thinning their own forces. And in fact, I don't think they've garnered huge advantage here. Yes, they've taken some land. Yes, Vovchansk is looking hairy, but actually it's ground to a bit of a halt. It's really slowed down. The Russians are taking losses. Yes, the Ukrainians are taking losses. They've lost actually quite a lot of equipment in the area. But actually, I don't think this is A, particularly sensible, and B, particularly successful either. What are your thoughts?
I would go the opposite direction, and I guess somewhere in the middle we'll find the truth. If I let me do this.
That's not to say, by the way, that's not to say. What I mean by that is that they would have had more success. So this could be successful, like depending on what your objectives are. But I don't think it would have been as successful had they committed all those troops to another place on the front line. That's my point.
Let me share mine. I sent it to you.
Yep.
Oh, I'm controlling the map on Johnny's stream. Okay, listen, this is like an honor because the man and his mapping ability and analysis and geopolitical wizardry is like, I have Johnny's map on Johnny's stream. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, here's my concern. Here's my concern. We know already that, let me turn this off. I want to get a little closer. Right.
Yeah,
here.
it's annoying that you can't write on it and zoom in.
I know it. So once they get Lipsy, if that's their goal, and they are advancing on it, Vovchansk up here, this has a different purpose.
Yeah.
My opinion. I'm also reading a lot of Russian commentary on this to get any insight I can as to why. So
Lipsy seems to be about getting into artillery range.
This region right here of Kharkiv is called Saltivka. Okay, just remember salt. Anytime you guys see Saltivka, Saltivka is a massive region of Kharkiv that is destroyed. It is destroyed from 22 when Russia made their first invasion, and I'm talking about massive destruction like you would see in Avdiivka and Bakhmut. That northeast corner of Kharkiv is destroyed. Over here is the massive thermal plant that is now out of commission and done. One of the largest TPPs in all of Ukraine. So as they come into this region here on this loop road outside Kharkiv right here, we've already got drones that have started to strike, Lancets starting to strike and take out. A video I showed on my stream was a truck carrying MLR system. It took it out. So once they get here, it's just like Kherson. It's just going to be artillery. They will just rain down on it. And it's not about taking Kharkiv. They can't take Kharkiv. No. Not in the current situation. Not possible. Not even a remote possibility. But what they can do is torture Kharkiv. And require Ukraine to pay attention because, guys, Ukraine has certain locations they cannot lose if they want to win this war. And Kharkiv, for sure, they cannot lose, period.
Yeah, I was under the impression that the Russia are struggling to get closer to Lipsy, that's where the Ukrainians seem to have done a fairly good job of defending for that reason, that it's that important to defend.
Yeah, it's vitally important. It's just time.
I think we
just wait and see.
That's a more important area than Vovchansk as far as I'm concerned.
Here's the deal about Vovchansk. So we're looking at Vovchansk. And guys, Vovchansk, I showed some video on it yesterday, Friday. And it's even worse now. It's just leveled. They are literally wiping it off the planet.
And it seems both sides are. So the Ukrainians have been hammering it with.
I showed that. They blew up that hospital because Russia was inside of it. And I explained to people, I said, okay, you're going to see the propaganda that's going to say Ukraine is leveling their own buildings. I said, now let me tell you the truth. The truth is they leveled their own building. But the Russian military was using it as a base. It's a legit military target. Okay. Now, why am I reading about Vovchansk? It's this right here. And guys, pay attention to this right here. So Vovchansk here really has nothing to do with Kharkiv. Lipsy has everything to do with Kharkiv.
Yeah.
Right here in the bottom of this map is Kupiansk. Huge bastion fortress area for Ukraine that Russia wants. What they're trying to do is create an access here because, of course, Ukrainian troops are scattered throughout here. Everything I'm reading, Russian side, Russian analysis, and there are some good sources I read in the direct Russian. I know you guys are there. Listen, Greg, if it's Russian, I understand that. Regardless, you have to read it to understand. How do you understand the enemy? Get inside their mind, okay? And they're talking about these places like Budarki and Kolodyazni, where they can begin to push in here and bring back support for Kupiansk. That's the purpose of this, because once if they get Vovchansk, there's nothing here, nothing vitally large. So that's more what I'm paying attention to, and I don't think very many are talking about it.
I'm just still doubtful that the Russians have enough to like they may well do. I could well be wrong, but I just think, 2 years into the war, yes, Ukraine are on their knees, but Russia, like the forces they're going to be applying here aren't going to be their crack forces. They might, especially if they're the new ones that have been put together particularly for this area, and you've got Lapin's in charge of him. I don't think he's particularly good, and so
I don't disagree with you. I just come back to there's two things you have to look at, and really three. The first one is artillery. Russia will not run out of artillery. That's the problem. Then you have to look at boots on the ground. And of course, they have the advantage there. But the repetitive theme is they will run out. And my point being, it's not so much about the boots on the ground, but it's about what they're having to do. I ultimately believe, you're going to get me to my crux now, they want to force Ukraine to negotiate. And I honestly believe that. I think that's, unless something major changes, that is the Russian narrative on this and what they're pushing for. That's
all they can achieve, I would argue.
It is. I agree with you. That's why we're seeing the pressure on Sumy, even if it's theoretical. When you have the third assault saying, or commanders in that region saying, we're seeing the buildup. I've been hearing from my guys up there for months. We're seeing the buildup. Johnny, you know information about that region that you can't share. We know that there's a buildup up here. So even if nothing comes across, Ukraine cannot ignore it. I know for a fact good units have had to rotate up into here from different fronts, southern specifically. So I can't tell you where, but they're there. So we're having just to move so many pieces around due to, like Zelensky said, a delay in supply coming. And because of that, we lose guys. We can't defend their position. So it's going to be interesting to watch. So I just say patience, step by step by step, and we'll see what's going to unfold. I just think they want to do to Kharkiv what they're doing to Kherson, and that is terrorized it.
I think you're right. It's all about artillery, getting into artillery range. And it's interesting that you mentioned Lancets. That's something I've been talking a lot about recently, because Ukraine need an answer to medium range drones, because Russia are using Lancets particularly effectively at the moment, have been for about 3 weeks, where you're just seeing consistent hits on, say, Andrew Perpetua's loss lists every day. There's just a whole lot of Lancet strikes that weren't there a couple of months ago. They really picked up, obviously, the production of Lancets and the application of them, and they are using those up in that northern area where they get into that sort of beyond the 10 to 15 kilometer range of FPV drones, which is why you're seeing Bogdanas being destroyed up in the Kharkiv region, and other sort of bits of kit, like you say, multiple launch rocket systems have been hit. And that's definitely a real challenge. Interesting here. So no report says, quote, Russia is amassing and redeploying forces to the Sumy border area. The task is similar to the operations in Kharkiv. Stretch the Ukrainian line and force the AFU to redeploy reserve units from elsewhere. The overall situation at the front is quite complicated, and it will not get any easier in the near future. Maxim Zhorin, Deputy Commander of the 3rd Assault Brigade, reports.
It's exactly who I'm quoting when I was talking earlier. Correct.
Yeah. And I go back to this idea that, so is it more important? So for me, is it more important that they destroy a bit of Kharkiv, or is it more important that they take Chasiv Yar and start trying to take places like Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk,
But
and
they
behind
can't take
here.
they can't take those cities.
No,
That's
no, well,
that's my point.
yeah.
That's
So
my point exactly. So for them to take that loop road right there, and I've
it
surrendered the
would be,
map back to Johnny.
yeah, it would be
It's
hugely attritional.
it's next to impossible.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the question is,
for them to draw resources to Sumy is possible without firing a shot. All they got to
Yeah.
do is push equipment to the border, and they're
Yeah.
doing it.
yeah,
For them to terrorize Kharkiv, all they have to do is take Lipsy, get within that range, and shell it mercilessly. It's exactly what they're doing to Kherson. Kherson is a ghost town. And today in Kherson, a Lancet killed a bakery truck, the driver, and destroyed it.
it's horrific what they do down there. It really annoys me because
but
it is
see,
just
that's
terrorism.
the point. And you know what? Nobody goes in Kherson now.
Yeah.
That because Johnny, they cannot. You've been there. You've been in that area. They can't take that without unbelievable loss and devastation of. It would require warfare that we have not yet seen in this war for Russia to take that. We're talking about some serious, unbelievable warfare.
So this calculation kind of goes to what you're saying here, Greg, which is
Mhm.
to say, because I was saying, like, if my objective was to take the Donbass, right, realistically take the Donbass, then I'd be putting my 50,000 troops not in Kharkiv, I'd be putting them in Chasiv Yar. But you're saying that they just won't be able to take this, which is to say they won't be able to take Donbass, which is to say, what are Russia really doing? It goes back to like what their objective is, which you're saying is to get to the negotiation table, which is to say that even the minimalist appraisal of what Russia are trying to do, which is to take the Donbass, is not achievable for the Russian Federation, which is a phenomenal failure in terms of what they set out for in this war. I mean, that was one of their absolute minimal goals. So that is to say, we've got to a point where they are going to struggle to take any meaningful chunks of land down here without taking huge losses. So you're saying rather than force the Ukrainians to do things by not committing so many Russian troops and being so attrited by committing them up here.
You don't have to lose for them. You're losing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't care 200-300 troops to get 4 city blocks. You're losing nothing. And the closer you can crawl to be able to shell Kharkiv mercilessly, that's exactly what they want. And then just to play the poker face, well, we've got so much equipment up on the Sumy border that they at least have to pay attention to it. So I'm gonna take the map back one time, and right here, and I'm gonna show you my.
I just think that's interesting because this is an implicit acceptance that they're on a hiding to nothing, the Russians, in terms of being able to take anything meaningful in the east more than they have.
So here's my big play right here, and this is a lot of time on the front and a lot of people talking to. Kharkiv, shell it. Sumy, pressure. Continue to just do basic assaults on Kupiansk and Chasiv Yar. Just keep going. But what they really want is they want Karakova and they want to push toward Pokrovsk.
So this is interesting. So you think Karakova and Pokrovsk are more important than Chasiv Yar?
So then absolutely. Your supply line is cut. You see what happens then? You've got your pressure here. You've got your pressure here. And this is your circle that is Ukrainian fortress. You're never getting it. And then let's talk. It's just where I see it.
Yeah. It's because
this is a distraction here. They can't take Kramatorsk. They can demolish it. They can't take it.
Yeah. I know, I'd agree with you. It's just the idea was that it was all about Chancev Yar, and they were talking about that. Ukrainians were talking about that. It's going to be lost by the end of the summer, and now things seem to have pivoted a little bit to Chancev Yar actually being relatively quiet. It's not quiet. It's hellish there. But sorry, I don't mean quiet. I mean stable, somewhat more stable. And you can see that there's no move today in and around the Canal micro district, Bodonivka or even Ivska. A little bit around Klishivka, interestingly, but they are having much more success, the Russians, around, say, Krasnohorivka, and down here around Novomikhailivka.
So
into
right above your,
Paraskevivka.
go up, and the road right there to the left.
Krakow, yeah.
Brother.
So I mean, this is going to be, I think, more achievable than Chancev Yar.
Absolutely,
I would agree.
It's key.
I would agree.
And it's a key strategical place for Ukraine. That's not inside or OPSEC information. The whole world knows it, especially Russia knows it. All right. And the other place is up there on that push out of Ocherny that's kind of stabilized now, but they're 10 kilometers from the road.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to this. Do they have the ability to take all of this kind of, if you're talking about the Donbass, then you're going all the way here along the border there. I mean, they just don't have that ability. And so therefore I get back to like, well, what are you really doing, Russia? I mean, really, what are you doing? What are your actual objectives? Because I think they've got the pie in the sky objectives. Like Putin might still have his maximalist objectives, but people on the ground must be thinking, or there must be people. I don't know whether Putin has a realistic sense of what is going on and what can be achieved, whether there's a difference between Putin and the military people who do have a handle on this, going, well, realistically, unless we're going to mobilize 500,000 people and commit them all to the Eastern Front, we are not going to take the Donbass. So what are you doing?
Many people have talked about and starting to make a comparison towards Korea, but I remind you guys, there is a huge difference between Ukraine and Korea. Okay. The Americans fought there, and the Americans are in South Korea. It's one of our largest Pacific fortresses in the world. And if you talk about, even now, they start doing this, and we come in some future to some frozen conflict or a DMZ region. Okay. Who's going to be on the Ukrainian side of that DMZ? What's going to stop Russia from doing this again in 5 years? Because they will.
This is why these bilateral security agreements, I think, are quite important, and why they keep banging on about them, because actually what they're trying to do is lay out the foundations so that Russia can't take a second bite of the apple. So that they're kind of getting bilateral Article 5 equivalencies. I don't know exactly what's in these security agreements, but the idea is they're going around Europe and the US and everyone saying, right, we're going to have this security agreement so that it's not going to be in effect now, but if we go into peace now and then maybe get accession to NATO. So either we're going to get, if we don't get accession to NATO, so we don't get the Article 5 protection, then we're going to have bilateral protection, so we can call on people to give us proper aid, and that should act as a deterrent to Russia. I would think that that's kind of what's going on.
Let me ask you a question. The earliest that you're hearing Ukraine could be in NATO?
So a long time off, but it depends whether there's some funky negotiations. So one of the things that could happen is that Russia accepts that they get into NATO, but therefore, because that's such a big thing and protects Ukraine going forward, Ukraine would be willing maybe to give up the maximal amount of land to Russia possible. So one of the ways of getting into NATO the quickest would be that. So it could be that Ukraine say, we're going to have to give up on the Donbass. We're even going to have to give up on Zaporizhia and Kherson up to the Dnipro. Keep it where it is now, but we're in NATO, and it means we're guaranteed that going forward. Now, obviously, that's suboptimal to everyone who feels that that's completely unfair, because Russia's just waltzed in and stolen stuff, and they get to keep it, which makes me enraged. But that could be something that's both beneficial to Russia and sort of beneficial to Ukraine, by point of fact that Ukraine is then
the point. Yes, the point we lose there, that I'm not sure at this point Ukraine themselves will not be all in. Whether the world will be all in with them is yet to be determined. But so many Ukrainian heroes have perished, and they have made packs with their comrades in arms, and I don't think
The Ukrainians won't be up for that.
I don't think they'll be up for that.
No, but it depends how
Rightfully so. It's their land.
I wouldn't want that, but
No.
realpolitik does different things, and I don't know that, but that is just one theoretical outcome. But if that wasn't going to happen, then NATO would be quite a long way away, as the EU accession would be as well, etc., etc. So going back to the front line, there's a little bit of movement up in the Krok-Malna area. Both Deep State Map and Andrew Perpetua seeing the Russians have moved up to where Suriyat Maps had them previously. So they all agree broadly that the Russians have taken some ground south of Krok-Malna in that Tabaivka area. I don't think that's particularly important. It's a small amount of land. It's not the end of the world. And I think we're at a stage now, in a phase where the Russians are attacking. This is their offensive stage, and you would expect them to be taking land, and it's not the end of the world, and everyone gets, oh my goodness. But if you're going to lose land anywhere, somewhere like that, for me is go for it. You can go and expend a load of troops doing that. Fair enough. I don't think that's
completely agree.
Too much of a problem. Chaziv Yar's interesting, like we've talked about previously, but quite something that Klishchiivka appears to be back on the cards for Russia, at least according to Suriyat Maps, and take what they claim with a pinch of salt. But actually, they do seem to be indicating where attacks are taking place, and eventually the Russians do take control of it. Whether they do when Suriyat Maps claims or not is a different matter. But
the thing there, if that red is completely accurate, so the railhead is already taken, which is vital. And the other thing is, there is nothing left there.
Yeah, I mean,
when people, like right now, all these people are watching the stream, and you show the map, and we do the aerial zoom in, and you see these villages and these roads, for example, like Klishchiivka, and you look at it and go, okay, so Russia's got it, and they're probably in those houses, and Ukraine's over here in those houses, and they're fighting. Okay, they are, but there's no houses.
Yeah,
it is rubble.
So Klishchiivka, this has not got the updated Google mapping. There is updated Google mapping in certain places, and one of the ones I like to show people is Bilahorivka, because this does have updated, as in this is still like a year out of date or something now.
Yeah.
But this is what Bilahorivka looks like, which is effectively completely rubblized.
Yes,
there's nothing left of any of these houses, and that's basically what Klishchiivka looks like.
I'm going to be doing a piece tomorrow on my live stream about the housing situation in Ukraine. I'm doing some study on that this evening, and it's becoming critical for Ukraine. Ukraine's been talking about exactly what you're talking about there, even though that's occupied now, but the amount of housing that is had damage or destroyed out east and south is beginning to cause a problem, because they're literally running out of homes, and when they're trying to stabilize or to hold on, it's causing struggles in other parts of the country now with rent costs, and then fuel is going up, and electricity tariffs are going up. There's just some economic instability that a lot of it's caused by destruction of housing.
Well, and war.
And more.
What's interesting here, this is what we've been waiting for a long time. So this is just to remind people, because it's been a long time since we've been here. We go into the 3D rendering here. You've got Klishchiivka sits beneath this higher ground, and on top of the higher ground is an extensive trench network that Suriyat Maps claimed the Russians took control of ages ago, except they didn't. And there was lots of evidence to suggest they hadn't. And Andrew Perpetua said, look, we know for a fact that the Ukrainians still control this part of this trench, that part. They probably don't control this part, but this part's a grey area, etc., etc. Suriyat Maps didn't change that until they changed a little bit previously. And then this evening or today, they have changed the rest of it. So this isn't that the Ukrainians have retaken those trenches. This is that the Ukrainians always had control of these trenches, or at least
vitally important.
Yeah, and that's hugely important because Klishchiivka is effectively irrelevant because it is just rubble and sitting below here. So if you control up here, then you really control Klishchiivka. So, you know, if you can get your mortar crews to hammer Klishchiivka, etc., etc. So the key is whether the Russians take this area, not so much whether they take this area. So that's my tuppence for that. But I'm amazed actually that the Ukrainians have held on here for so long, considering Ivanivska to the north has been pretty much taken, etc., etc. So, however, I have been impressed that the Ukrainians have kept the Russians backing Chasiv Yar for as long as they have and as successfully as they have. And that could be because Russia had pivoted. It could be because Chasiv Yar isn't as important as they kind of everyone thought it was, Russians and Ukrainians alike, maybe three months ago, that actually they had that success in Avdiivka. That came from a bit of a rout that involved aviation being useful and the Ukrainians running out of ammunition, etc., etc. And there's a bit of opportunism, and then there was the what was it, the 110th or whoever it was that did a bit of being AWOL around this area. And so the Russians could have just pivoted to here, say, right, we're having more success here. We have actually got a more realistic chance of taking Pokrovsk, more than we do of those ring cities and towns, or we have more opportunity of taking Karakova. So let's just do that instead. And it could be that they've pivoted down to some of these places. But here, the Russians have had some success in that northern Avdiivka area, north of Novokonyovo and Keramik here. A couple of the mappers agreeing that all the mappers broadly agreeing in that area. And then some movement to the south of Solovyove, where the Russians have moved through some fields, a bit of rejigging of mapping in Ukraine's favor as far as deep state map's concerned there, although it disagrees with the other mappers. And then, around Netalyove, all the mappers agree that, you know, this is where they previously were, and the Russians are moving through Netalyove from Pervomaysky into this area. It's an interesting area. I wonder what's going to happen from here. So basically, if the Russians move into this area, reporting from Ukraine was talking about this being a bit of a funnel where the Ukrainians can have a pop at the Russians as they're in this kind of kill zone here, because you've got these water features either side. So it's maybe not ideal that the Russians go in there. So what their next move is around here, I don't know. Whether they'll just try and loop round to the south around Kharkivka. This is an important place. You've got a dam here. You've got would have been important some time back. Obviously, the closer you get to these places, the less important they become, because you can't use them as logistics hubs because they have fire control over them, etc., etc. So anyway, it's success for the Russians.
It puts them 10 kilometers north of Krasnogorivka.
Yeah. Which is here.
Yes, it's an important place, of course, with the sheer size of it. And then, listen, let's just repeat it. All they want to do is destroy. That's it. So if they can get some positions there and start shelling from the north, yeah, they're happy. They just want to destroy.
Interesting rejig here, or I don't know if it's a counterattack or something, but Deep State Maps has said that they had the Ukrainian or the Russian defensive line here, and now it's further back, this weird area. So I don't know whether that means, I don't know what that means, but anyway, there's a bit of a change there for some reason or another. And then the Russians are having some success around Novomykhailivka through into Paraskevivka here. Where they are moving alongside the water feature there, close to Konstantinivka, which is a fairly key place.
Yes.
It gives them access to this road that comes down to Vuhledar, and then will give them the ability to attack.
People are going, I thought Konstantinivka's up there. They've got lots of cities that have the same names, guys.
Absolutely. One of my pet whinges. But Deep State Map has some rejigging here, or maybe a counterattack for the Russians, the Ukrainians, because that's quite a significant area that they've moved the Russian line back. So I don't know what's going on there, but then they move the Russian line further to the west, just south of there. So there are interesting moves there. Who knows what's going on anyway. It's interesting that pretty much along this whole area, the south, there's no change there. No change at the moment to Dnipro River again. So quite a bit of stability in a number of places. But Robotina seems to be back on the agenda again, as the Russians are really trying to push there. Some disagreement between the mappers. Suret Maps, as a pro-Russian mapper, sometimes just aligns himself with what the Russian MED claim. And the Russian MED claimed they'd taken Robotina. And then, Ukrainian commanders in the area are like, no, you haven't. Like, here's evidence that we're still in Robotyne. And
Yeah.
so there's a bit of a disagreement over that. But
It's
rest
close
assured,
to falling.
yeah, rest assured it's rubble. And, you know,
it's close
it's
to
not
fall.
it's not as if Ukrainians are going to be controlling it, but it'll be
No.
grey zone.
Yeah.
And then it looks like the Russians are then filling in these gaps as they kind of move forward and make this salient smaller and smaller. But again, I'll say what I said last time we spoke, Greg, which is I'm just amazed that Ukrainians have held on to that.
I agree, buddy.
Have.
They've done a phenomenal job. We support those guys that fight down there. So we get a lot of information from them. They're wonderful heroes, fighting against very difficult odds and doing an amazing job down there.
Yeah, and just sorry, just looking at a couple of other sources. What is evident as well is that there's a lot of footage coming out of Russian vehicles being smashed up by FPV drones again. Like it comes, you know, we did have a period recently where it looked like, you know, when the Russians were moving into the Avdiivka salient and they're having all that success, we're now actually seeing like artillery being used on Russian advances, which is good. It's not obviously as much as one would like, but they are using artillery. Some units do have artillery ammunition, and FPV drones are just really effectively being used, and even more effectively now than they were even say 6 months ago. I've seen FPVs take out vehicle. I just think they've really increased the penetration of FPV drones and the explosive IDs on board. I've seen some really big explosions. I've seen buildings being collapsed by single explosions.
Think
from
about
an
that.
ID.
Think about the change in warfare that has happened over the last 817 days.
Yeah, just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
It's so dangerous, guys. The drones are so dangerous.
And that'll be for both sides, but there is a lot of footage of, because Russians are on the attack, right? So it's more likely.
Yeah, both sides. Both sides. The drones are dangerous.
But we are naturally going to see more Russian equipment blow up because they're the ones on the attack, moving into grey zones with, you know, equipment. I've seen so many APCs jam packed with people get hit. I've seen many where, like ants, they've jumped off the APCs and run in different directions. I've seen other ones where they've been hit and you're thinking no one got out of that alive, and other ones where you see people kind of fall off and then people are lying on the ground injured. So there's a whole variety of how dangerous drones can be in stopping or destroying this equiment.
Let's get some good news right here, because their payloads are increased. I'm reading my chat here real quick, but somebody Ricardo Zettino, don't forget about the Navy. You know what? Let's give a shout out. Ukraine is doing some smashing down on the against the naval ships. So yeah, thank God they've done a really good job with drone warfare, with missile attacks, with long range drone attacks, sinking ships, taking out ports. Yeah, kudos. That is an area where they show some real expertise and need support and need the ability to just unload.
Absolutely. Bear with me a second. I just need to get my son to close his door.
Okay. So while Johnny is doing that, that would be interesting to see. Let's see here. Johnny has a son.
I'm back.
There, he's back. Was that Oscar?
No, that was Finn. Finn's just got a little garage. I converted part of the garage into an area where he can play on his PlayStation.
What is a garage? You mean a garage?
No, a garage.
Oh,
so,
garage, okay.
So he gets very excited playing Fortnite, and that was just coming through a little bit there. So I just thought I'd better sort that out. But yes, like they've just done such a good job. This is where I've been excited about the use of ATACMS, about the use of drones, and taking out the air defense in and around Ukraine. So you got Belbek Air Base, you got Saki, Pretoria, you got Jankoy. They've been smashing places up. They've been taking out S-400s, S-300s, which then becomes a snowball. So the next time they attack, they can destroy more things, and then the next time, and hopefully it just gets better and better. And my opinion is that if you do have the ATACMS to shoot now, I'd just be hitting every single naval ship, because there still are quite a few naval ships in Sevastopol.
Yes, there is.
They haven't all gone to Novorossiysk. It's only a small port, Novorossiysk. This has extensive. I mean, if you look at Sevastopol here and all the different sort of inlets and piers and dry docks and all sorts that are going on there, and then you have, as you mentioned earlier, Feodosia, which is
Right to
over
the left,
here.
right there. Yep.
There you go. Feodosia and a couple of other places along that coast. But Novorossiysk is not quite so big. In fact, it really struggles to house all of those ships and submarines, particularly submarines. It's not constructed as a naval port, and they were going to redo it, but they didn't. And instead opted, for Sevastopol, thinking they'd have Sevastopol. And the other thing they're trying to do is build this port down in Abkhazia, off Georgia, somewhere around here. But the point is that Novorossiysk isn't big enough for them to house all of these ships, which means that it's open season. Surely it's open season on Sevastopol.
That's why I'd say, okay, then just throw the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah.
And try to minimize, okay, why would we logically throw the kitchen sink at those naval ships and those submarines? Because Ukraine's at a critical juncture. We need to stop as many missile attacks as possible. And this is why air defense is so important, F-16s in the future, et cetera, et cetera. But critically, electrical infrastructure it's critical. And we're just in May the 20th, moving into the cooling season. Say, well, a lot of guys don't use air conditioning. No, but businesses and it's a lot of infrastructure that requires a lot of juice, especially during the summer. It can get quite warm in Ukraine. So the more that Ukraine can do to take out the ability of Russia to continue to strike at infrastructure is very important.
And they took out the ship, the Cyclone, the 22800 project 22800 ship. That was the last cruise carrying ship in Sevastopol. And that means there are no ships in Sevastopol that can fire cruise missiles, which is fantastic.
Perfect.
And what they just need to do, we know that they can hit Novorossiysk because those drones did hit the port in Novorossiysk. They took out grain installations. We're quite unsure about exactly what was hit there.
Novorossiysk, Johnny, is where we a year ago took out a ship with a sea drone.
It is. I think
Ukraine can smash it.
Yeah. Like, this is why I was saying I'm quite bullish at the moment about the prognosis for Ukraine going forward. And I think, there was a really interesting video of a Russian person in Novorossiysk filming. I think it was Novorossiysk rather than Tuapse. I think it was Novorossiysk. And they were like, this is the 60th drone I've just seen going over.
Yeah, it was
one after. Yeah. And he was filming and just go one after the other. And so they've got that far, right? You're thinking, okay, what's the air defense like here? They might still have some existing, but as soon as if they can take out air defenses that are left in Novorossiysk, then just like 100 drones on Novorossiysk, thank you very much. Honestly, that makes me excited, because if they can take out cruise missile carriers here,
it helps protect your infrastructure on the back end.
Exactly. So then you're protecting your energy infrastructure, and they can only release things from air bases around here. And then when they start hitting air bases around here, which they are, so they've last week in one of those two drone attacks, so the second drone attack, they took out an air base somewhere around where they've taken out damage, maybe up to 3 Su-27s or something. I forget exactly where.
Region, just south of Krasnodar.
Yeah, somewhere around here. And you're thinking, if they can just keep doing this and making those planes disperse more and more and push those, and if they can do it up here. So there was news that came out today that a third of the bomber fleet has been moved somewhere like up here.
Yep.
And you're thinking,
yes.
Yeah, if the Russians have moved a third of their bomber fleet there, like, what's going on? Why are they doing that? Are they afraid of them being struck? This is Ukraine flexing with drones at the moment. And that makes me happy, because it does have knock-on effects and how they can protect themselves.
It's critically important. You see those guys, and I know people that are watching our live here, and many of you that will be watching later on the rebroadcast on the channels, you say, well, okay, but they like fire missiles like every few days, and they just aim them at places and all of that, and different cities, Kyiv, Lviv, Khmelnytsky, all over Ukraine. But they're hitting apartment buildings with them, guys. They do, but it's not really their target. Where the devastation is so bad is all within that front line areas, and that's why I'm so focused on Kharkiv right now. And I hope we don't have to deal with that with Sumy, and then of course Kherson, and then all the front lines because of the glide bombs, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason that Russia will put 30 Shaheeds in the air and 20 missiles is not to hit an apartment building. That they're happy to do that, or hit a hospital. They want to hit infrastructure. And it doesn't say, I'm not saying they're always just targeting infrastructure, because for sure they've targeted buildings and hospitals and civilian targets more times than they've targeted military targets. But they are really keen right now. In fact, they gloat about it, because I read all the Russian media. They're gloating about the damage they're doing in the Lviv region, especially on the gas export storage containers. And it's a focus, but those things do have a significant effect on Ukraine. Right now, Ukraine is on a scheduled blackout system. It starts again at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Additionally, that
it's starting today. In fact, that's
yes, the start
today,
of the price of gas has went up about 7 hryvnia. And when I say gas, this is not natural gas for heating a building. This is not. This is petrol, propane. And so many guys in Ukraine modified their fuel systems to keep the fuel down. So the cost of gas going from about 25, 26 hryvnia per liter, moving up to 32, 33 is very significant, very significant. And then the fuel prices, and then the electrical tariff, and the tariffs that have been increased on civilians is going to be about 4.5% to 5%. Okay, manageable. I actually asked Jania about that the other day on a live stream. He says, yep, we can handle that. That's okay. But where the electrical tariff is being increased much more heavily is on business. And it's a challenge. So you're getting that trickle down effect. So any way that Ukraine can guard against more infrastructure being hit is a huge win.
Absolutely critical. Yeah. Just some big thanks due to some people. So this is one for you. So
that's my man there, Dunk on You 23, Michael Jordan in the house.
Working, but will be listening, Slava Ukraini, and he's gifted 10 Greg Terry Experience memberships.
Dunk on You 23. You know who 23 was, right, Johnny?
Yeah, of course I do.
Michael Jordan. You ever heard of Michael Jordan?
Yeah, he plays cricket, doesn't he?
Right. Well, that's after he retired from being a professional rugby player. But yes, that's the two sports he played.
Yeah. No, I am aware of him. Okay. My son has a pair of Air Jordans. I think, has he got real ones, or were they the fake ones we got in Turkey?
They're real, Johnny. They're real.
Well, no, I know they're real if you get real ones, but we got some fake ones in Turkey because they don't have copyright laws there. So yeah, you can get all sorts. Anyway, Blonde Bombsheller, thank you very much on behalf of Greg. This is for you, Greg. From
let me say this as well, Blonde Bombsheller, because we do Friday flag giveaways. Blonde Bombsheller, Cheryl Waitley, and
legend.
Legend there. Blonde Bombsheller, Cheryl Waitley, and B Lady Apiary. All your flags went out in the mail today, so you'll be receiving them soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Blonde. And Petra Olsen for you as well, giving you some Swedish love.
Thank you, Petra. Love Sweden.
And the B Lady Apiary.
There she is. Yeah, your flag's in the air as well. USA send troops all over the world. Why not Ukraine? Are we that afraid of Russia?
That would be just World War III starting there.
That's the deal, yeah.
You know, what you want is, like I said the last time we were speaking, what you want, in my opinion, is people like the Baltic states to start moving people in to do training. They're small enough that Russia won't react too badly. It's not like France, not like the UK, not like the US. You start getting some of those troops in, and then it's a mission creep. And then suddenly there's a bit more, oh, we need an air defense system. And then suddenly, without really realizing it, there's some really serious allied presence hanging out in Ukraine. Rick from the Netherlands, super sticker, thanks very much, matey. Really appreciate that. One for you, Aussie T, saying good morning, watching next door. Interesting. Does that mean you are watching next door? So you're looking through their curtains, looking at what they're doing. Being
Yeah, I think
Tom? Or
of
is that
course Aussie T down there in the land down under. I think he's a neighbor with Linda S, who's a big supporter of all of us watching, and I think he must be creeping around her bushes on the outside, looking through the window, watching the stream.
Nice. And another one for you as well.
Although I'm assuming Aussie T's a male.
Yeah. Do you know what?
Who Aussie T's watching through the window. Okay, whatever.
Stephen Bendel, some Norwegian love. Fab chat, guys. This is for you. I think it's time for NATO to say we take care of all the land west of the Dnipro, secure the borders and the sky. Ukraine can focus on the east part. Interesting. I mean, I wouldn't disagree. I think we need to just push the envelope big time, because I think Putin will step back. I don't think
Stephen Bendel's got some insight there. That I'm not for this, okay, and not supporting at all. But that was my prediction week 1 of the war, by the way.
Yeah. Interesting. The Weasel gifting 5 Greg Terry memberships. Nice weaseling there, Weasel. Julian Roster, thanks, mate. Why has Russia not been added to the state sponsored of terrorism list? This frustrates the heck out of me as well, mate. It's a great question. It should be a no-brainer. They are doing. I've heard the woomph of artillery going into Kherson while I was there, and the only reason for Russia to attack Kherson, as Greg's already intimated earlier, is for terrorism, because there is no military targets in Kherson. You drive around there and there's no military walking around. You go anywhere else in Ukraine, there's military everywhere.
Let's OPSEC that. That's public knowledge, guys.
Yeah,
that's public knowledge. Russia knows, Ukraine knows, and anybody knows anything about this war knows that. It doesn't mean there's not military around. Yeah, but guys, Kherson is a city under siege. It's a city under siege, and every
day there's news coming out there of X and Y getting hit, a bus stop getting hit, this person dying, that person dying, this building getting hit, and 100% of those strikes are on civilian targets, and they're just lobbing lead into Kherson for terrorism. It's for terrorism.
Zhenya called me. Well, of course we talk every day, but he called me and says, "Hey, man, the doorway where you and I were giving aid out," and he reminded me of which building it was. He goes, "It was just hit and destroyed." Oof. Gone. Wow. So it just, it brings you many places where, and not just us, but anybody that's given aid or runs the front lines, many places where we have worked, and we, as a general statement there, Johnny, this would be you now. Yeah. There are places that we took you to that have been hit since then. It's just, it's relentless. It's nonstop. And, Blonde Bombsheller's mad at you because you didn't mention the sermon, Johnny. Yes, I had a good church service yesterday. Sorry. Johnny, I'm inviting you, by the way, next Sunday to church.
Anyway, so Aussie T gifted 1 ATV Geopolitics membership. Thanks, Aussie T. No, I would love to see you do your thing there, Greg. I'd just be like taking notes, saying, no, disagree.
No problem. Well, I Dick Dawson from the Shills did watch one Sunday, and I virtually casted the demon out of him. So he's clean now. Everything's good. But we wouldn't have to do that to you, Johnny, because you are a legend.
And thank you to KB for this question. So if we have time, was looking at Flight Radar 24, which has a GPS jamming map. Northern Iran has tons of jamming, affects airliners. Do you think it contributed? So I presume this is on a subject of the president Raisi, who is now dead, the Iranian president. This is something that Greg actually wanted to talk about. So Greg, did you want to mention?
Yeah, I'm gonna be looking at this closely. Everybody was watching like the last 20. I almost went live last night because I think this is an important story, and it connects to Ukraine, and that is the President Raisi and the foreign minister being killed in the helicopter crash. And I hate when people die. So period. So sad, condolences, but he's the butcher of Baghdad. So okay, that's what you get. Okay, so that's where I stand on that. But, people already started coming out, well, this is good for Ukraine. This is good for Israel. Guys.
Which is Tehran.
Pause on that. First of all, the guy that is now the president. So I just want to update everybody. The guy that is now the president, he will be the interim president for 50 days. Iranian law is they then call for the election at 50 days. And once that happens, we'll kind of see where Abraham Reisi is what I'm thinking about, where Iran pushes that out. But I want to remind you, or if you do not know, maybe I'm giving this information to you for the first time. When Iran was negotiating in Moscow with Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin in regard to supplying shaheeds early in the war, it was the guy that is now the president. He was responsible for the negotiations. It wasn't Raisi. It was this guy. And so we're not really having a regime change for sure. Many Iranians are celebrating this. Many other nations are celebrating this because it's a possibility that maybe some things could change. So for that, we'll have to wait and see. But you will see no changes from Iran over the next 50 days. They point blank said it. No policies change. Nothing changes. We go according to our laws. We'll have an election in 50 days. It will be interesting to watch what happens because, guys, Iran is right in the middle of everything connected to China, connected to Russia, connected to Ukraine, connected to the war in Israel, connected to America with the sanctions. I mean, it's like they're one of these nations that are vitally important for how geopolitical events are unfolding, not only in Ukraine, but throughout that region and the world. So that was being talked about on Russian media. The second thing that was being talked about on Russian media was this. It was interesting. They already started the propaganda. So I'm warning you right now. You will see it. It's already started in Russia. A, the U.S. took the chopper down. B, it's the U.S.'s fault because we sanctioned Iran and they were not able to get their president a more modern chopper and all of this stuff. C, it's America's fault because due to the sanctions, couldn't get the proper repair parts there. So it was a CIA job to take the helicopter down and all that jazz. Okay, so you're going to see that. That's what's coming out of Russia. Secondly,
and of course, so just on that point, though, Greg,
yes, sir.
What Russia tend to do is they throw as much spaghetti at the wall and see, which bits or shite at the wall and see which sticks. So there are going to be all sorts of different theories, and some of them are mutually exclusive. So some of the theories can't work with the other theories that they're throwing, but they'll throw them all out there, put them all out there. They all get traction, and they're like, look, it's the Americans' fault. Anyway.
Well, secondly, they're blaming Israel. Okay, well, this is Israel's fault. They're the ones that did it, partnering with America. They had the inside people there and Mossad. It was Mossad that did it. I'm giving you guys Russian propaganda, okay? And you will see it because it takes time to filter through the translations. Then the videos start to appear on Twitter in a few days. But this is what they're saying. Are you ready for the third thing they're saying? Oh, this one. It was planned. And we must pay attention because the German politicians had an attempt. Then FICO or FISO, however it's pronounced it properly, FITSO had an assassination attempt. And they had a list of like 6 politicians that are prominent over the last 4 or 5 weeks, very ill or attempts on their life. And then this morning we wake up to the news that the Saudi Arabian guy may be dead and pneumonia took him out, and his son, the prince, had to stay in Saudi Arabia because he can't leave and all of this stuff. And they're using it like crazy. See, there is a destabilization in the world coming from the West, taking these leaders out. Just wait. You'll see it. I promise you.
I personally think it was the Kiwis in New Zealand, down in Dunedin and South Island.
The truth is, it's an old helicopter. Iran did come out and say, which will go on to help push the Russian narrative, whatever it will end, whichever piece of spaghetti sticks to the wall, it'll support it. So it's not Fog that did it. It was a technical malfunction. So now they can run with that. Who caused the technical malfunction? We're not going to pay attention to it's a 60-year-old helicopter that's a piece of crap. Other than that, it's somebody did it.
Yeah, I mean, the weather was atrocious. It was. As far as first thing I thought was like, oh, what's happened? Someone's done that. And then second thing, I was like, no, actually, it does seem genuinely an accident. I mean, there are people questioning why there were all those people in that one helicopter. And as was just mentioned, you know, there could have been jamming going on. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, could well be the case. But I guess we'll see it all come out in the wash eventually. But as you're saying, there's no guarantee that there will be a change of direction for Iran. However, there's more of a chance of a change of direction for a more positive outlook for Iran than had this not have happened.
For sure. At least you have a chance.
Yeah. So the fingers crossed. But yeah, you know, as far as I understand, they're tightening security, etc., etc. So, you know, I'm not overly hopeful, but you know, fingers crossed that something good comes of this, because you know, he was not a nice guy, Butcher of Tehran, and it's interesting that so many nations are giving the obligatory condolences, but like, it's like, yeah, really sorry about that. Yeah. But so yeah, other than that, it was so frustrating.
There was a fourth one. There was a fourth one.
Yeah,
because I'm trying to remember them all. Yeah, they did a parallel connection to how Raisi was taken out compared to how Gaddafi. It was Gaddafi. They were making a connection between Muammar Gaddafi and Raisi. Oh, I'm telling you, man, you guys need to learn Russian so you can read their news. It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, what I was talking about on my piece this morning, Steve Rosenberg from the BBC was going through the Russian newspapers this morning, saying that there's some really interesting stuff, because when you bear in mind that these are all state-sanctioned messages coming out, there was quite a lot apparently in the Russian media today about, because the Putin delegation's just been over in China and talking about China, but not in particularly like glowing terms, as in like it's not a relationship without limits. So this is no limits relationship they're supposed to be having, but actually the Russians are somewhat worried about the asymmetry of power there, and you know, whether they're looming over in the east of the country ready to take advantage of Russia, that they want to help. There's not enough investment from China at the moment, and that's partly because China, when they invest in countries, want to take control of the infrastructure they're building, and they build it and then control it, but Russia don't want that, and Russia doesn't want China to be a vassal state of China, but they are inexorably going towards this point where they are becoming a vassal state of China, and they're realizing that, but they're putting that message out there, so the Kremlin has sanctioned that message.
I think it's fair to say that China will always do what benefits China. Yeah,
100%. And you know, some might say there are ideological connections between China and Russia, but not really. I mean, there's just, China will do what's in the best interest of China, and actually Russia will do whatever is in their best interest, given that they're in desperate straits at the moment, economically, geopolitically, and China is their only way out of the problems they're in, and they are in a lot of problems. Russia, there are things happening, you know, the labor shortage and issues with hydrocarbons, selling them around the world, sanctions, all these things that might not be working perfectly, but they are all having an effect on Russia that is making things uncomfortable. They've lost a lot of people in the war. They've got a lot of people that run out of the country. It is so on and so forth.
John Hoover, I sent you an email. Your box arrived. Thank you. Be opening it after the stream. That's some goodies from Ukraine that the American there volunteering training sent for me to auction or raffle to help raise support for Ukraine. So super cool there. I'll open that.
That reminds me. Sorry.
King Raccoon.
Yeah, King Raccoon sent me this that he had raffled from you, and I'm going to re-raffle it. So that's very kind of him. I want to know how you go about doing that, Greg. We'll talk about that.
Offline, we'll talk about it off.
But yeah, when's the next push for any fundraising for our sort of stuff? Obviously, it's always going on.
Yes, it's always going on, and people are constantly giving, and we are loading the 4 armored vehicles that are so desperately needed. Export is in process, but we'll be filling them with, I mean, the work that's going on for these are going to be the envy of the entire front line. Not only they're going to be the best armored medevac vehicles, but like the state-of-the-art drone systems. They're going to be full of medical supplies, oxygen systems. I mean, it's nuts what Zhenya has the guys doing to modify these even further as we're getting them from Takes a Lot. So we're doing that right now. Secondly, There will be, it's like morally, I want to get those there. It's going to end up being a $300,000 project, the way we're outfitting them and equipping them and getting them to the front. And people have been so generous, got it done. So I want to deliver them, show the keys. We did show the ground drone being with the military. We've got that delivered. In fact, I just received video in from them, proprietary for us. So you guys will be seeing that hopefully tomorrow. So, we're validating. We're there. So us, you see us. Johnny was there with me. What we do with those large projects, we want to make sure that people physically see myself put the keys in the hands of that soldier. But Gertis called me yesterday. And he's always like the little devil sitting here on my shoulder.
See, you just said little devil sitting on your shoulder. There's 666 people watching this at the moment. Anyway,
see, that's what happened. Gertis is always there. He'll call me and he'll go, "Hey, Greg, I got an idea." So Gertis has had another idea. And
you make Professor Gertis sound way more like masculine action hero than he is. No offense to hey man,
I
hey Greg, I got me an idea.
Gertis had an idea, and so we will be initiating a new minor project. We're going to smash it in I would say a week, but it's going to continue to bring validation to our efforts standing with Ukraine and the global community. We've got something in the works, and you guys should be hearing about that hopefully this week. But we don't release things until we've got all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. That's what happens when you partner up with a professor with a PhD. He's really nerdy, but I love him. Johnny likes him too.
We are an interesting group of people.
You know what? We're an example of how it should be.
Yeah, for sure.
This is how it should be. Like, I'm telling you right now, Johnny and I may disagree on a lot of things, but I would take a bullet for Johnny Pierce. And I know he would do the same.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way it is. We can take the things we disagree upon them and put them on the shelf and have a nice conversation about them over a spot of tea. We don't have to rip each other's heads off and call you a bleach blonde butch body skank woman, camera whore as MPG, or fake eyelashes. We communicate like human beings.
I'd definitely take a shot. I'd take a bullet in my legs because they're not very useful at all.
Yeah, well, Yeah, I mean, I would take a bullet in my vest for you. Pete is doing good, guys. Pete is doing good. I talked to him today. I saw the question in the chat. So, can we send stuff directly to Ukraine to the soldiers? Not really. It's so difficult. It's a challenge. To be honest, it's a challenge. Yeah. So anyway, something cool's coming. Stay tuned. You all will want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that with the flag then, and get that signed as well.
There he is, King though.
And then we'll raffle that off, and I'll do a bit of fundraising to help that, of course. So as we meander to the end, as is our want, is there anything else?
Well, my guys on my channel know that I will be heading to the CrossFit gym now. My kids are forcing me, Johnny, to get in better shape, although I'm in much better shape than I was a year ago. I'm doing really good. Look at that thing climbing up there, baby.
Holy cow.
Oh, I'll take one for you, buddy. So I'm working on, I'm crossfitting, and that's why I move my streams on many days to 4 o'clock Eastern. And if I'm not at the gym, I'll do it 5 o'clock. It's kind of the time window. It's not, I try to find a time that everybody's not doing something. And this has worked out. And I've got so many wonderful members and viewers from Europe. And I just want to make sure that it's not 3 a.m. for them. So figured it out pretty close. So
You seem to be taking the Arnie template and modeling yourself on that. I go for the stick insect, and I've got a lot of time.
Actually, you look a little bit like Mr. Potato Head, but other than that,
fair enough.
Let me be quite honest with you guys. Jonathan has MS, and it's not easy for him to move around a lot. And the trip we did taking him to the front line, he never complained one time. He never slowed us down. Never. He was a trooper. And I know there were probably times that he was in pain or tired or didn't want to go. You never heard a peep. It was, let's go, mate. All I need is tea. That's all I need is tea. And we can keep going. He wobbled one time in Kherson, but
I
was his guard. No,
I fell in his
I'm
Zoom.
sorry. You fell in the Zoom on me. Yes, he almost tore my ACL in the Zoom when he landed on my knees, but we caught him in the snow. And then the other time he started to wobble going up the steps in Kherson, but I was right behind him to put the hand of God on his back.
Brilliant.
Love
Thank
you, buddy.
you. Thanks for that. The hand of God, man. So we have a few more super whatnots. The B Lady Apiary says, Greg Terry experience. I mean, this is definitely one for you, not for me. Can Catholics watch your service wherever it is?
I would love for Catholics to watch my service. I love Catholics, brothers and sisters there. Yes, I will. I will put the YouTube description. I'll put the link in my YouTube description going forward.
God, Mertz is going on about this as well. Greg, if you're giving a 9 a.m. next Sunday, I will attend. I was actually planning on riding down to tomorrow to visit.
Mertz,
my goodness, what's going on here?
Do it. This is a neighbor of mine up to the north. Please send me an email, Mertz. And if you want to come down tomorrow sometime, early afternoon, that would be just fine. Or Sunday, just email me. I'll email you back tonight.
Lynn, thank you so much. Surprised it's us. Gifted 580B Geopolitics, and you know they exist. Thank you very much. I'm not sure what that message is, except Greg interrupts all the time with blossoming exuberance as he shakes off his early conservative molding. I'm not sure what that is with reference to, but I love a blossoming exuberance. Everyone loves blossoming exuberance. I don't use the word exuberance enough, and I think I should. We love some exuberance from Greg. Last words, Greg. What do you have to say?
I do see the Shills moderator in here, CF Beauty. Just want to give a shout out to CF Beauty and Dick Dawson, the Shills. They just completed the NAFO project truck, and kudos to them. And we just have a great group. And I know many people in the chat here, whether on your channel or my channel, we have this group that we've learned to trust. And we may not always agree on everything, but we all agree that we stand for Ukraine and we do our best to support them. So as I would close out, I think we've given a really good update over the last hour and a half. I think it's extremely accurate, and I think we've given some different avenues of thought. And what we do, we just wait. In Russian, it would be shag za shagom. In Ukrainian, it would be krok za krok. And krok za krokom. And in English, it would be step by step. So step by step, we watch. We see some cards that are on the table, and do our part. Support efforts to help Ukraine through our channels. Support efforts to help Ukraine by contacting your politicians. And that's what we can do. And if we stand together and be the best example we can be, I believe we'll be fruitful.
Absolutely, 100%. Nothing I disagree with in that at all. You have my backing on everything you said there. Lawrence, just for the record, I didn't throw a wobbler, which in British parlance means have a bit of a get angry with something. I didn't throw a wobbler. I physically wobbled.
Yeah, he physically wobbled. He typically throws a wobbler at a cockwomble, though.
Yeah, I am a toppling philosopher as much as I am a
toppling philosopher. Yes.
Okay. Well, look, thanks everyone in the live chat. You've been wonderful. Thank you for all those people. We were up over 700 at one point, so that's really fantastic for watching live. And I'll be with you guys as ever tomorrow with all my normal updates. Greg, it's always a pleasure, never a chore. You take care of your good self.
Thanks, JP.
And
love you, buddy.
Thanks for all the hard work you do, man. Big love to you. And take care, everyone. I guess all that's left to say is Slava Ukraini.
Geroim Slava.
Nice.